Some professionals have the profound ability to touch people's hearts and influence their lives in the way wedding officiants do. To stand out from the multitude of ordained wedding officiants, one must have superior interpersonal skills and heartfelt and committed service to the couple and their wedding. Like our guest for this episode, Christopher Shelley is a certified life cycle celebrant, a professional wedding officiant, and an author. His goal is to make the ceremony the most entertaining part of the wedding day. Tune in as Maria and Christopher talk about the wedding business in New York, what makes him unique to other officiants, and his advice to other officiants.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Maria Romano here, True Love Knots. I have a great treat for you. So I have all the way from New York City, close to my hometown, the Bronx. I have Christopher Shelley here, and I am so excited to have him on my program. I met Christopher, as a matter of fact, Chris, I met you over at Wedding MBA.
That's correct.
That's right, where I gave a talk, and they had tasked me with the talk of marketing. But that's okay, we got through it, and I really wanted to get
great.
And I really wanted to get more into podcasting as well. And I always like to bring my community some value. So first of all, virtual hugs and kisses. And we got the memo. Usually I don't wear something on, but something told me I needed to wear this today, especially for you. So you know what, Chris, a lot of people want to probably hear about you. So give me your backstory of how you got involved, because you do a couple of things in the wedding business, and I don't want to give it away. So share with us a little bit about how you got started.
Well, first of all, before I get to that, I have to confess that I changed into my flowered shirt just minutes ago. I was in my ratty black sweatshirt, and I thought, no, let's dress up for Maria.
Love it, love it.
So this is just for you, and I'm glad I did.
Thank you.
But I've been a wedding celebrant since 2011, and I got into doing weddings because I went to a lot of wedding ceremonies I did not enjoy at all. I thought the person doing the wedding wasn't very personal, maybe didn't even know the couple, and I was just like itching to jump up there and do it myself. So I interviewed a lot of people who do this work, saw nothing wrong with it. It appeals to me as a performer. It appeals to me as a writer, and it appeals to me as an older adult who's been married for a long time and been through some things. And I love being part of people's special day.
So you mentioned something, performer. What did you do in your former life?
Oh, I've had several former lives, like most New Yorkers. But I moved here because I was an actor, just like a lot of other people. I went to an acting conservatory, a classical theater training conservatory at Boston University. The graduates, we all tended to move here to New York, where all the plays are cast. And we started our theater lives there. And that was a long time ago. I went from theater to working at an investment bank called Goldman Sachs,
of course,
which I'd never heard of at the time because I was a theater kid. And my parents urged me to take the job when they asked me to work for them. So I worked there for a long time, and then I left them. I left them over and over, actually. I kept going back. But the last time I left them in 2008, when Lehman Brothers collapsed and there was the whole subprime mortgage fiasco, my wife and I at the time were we were training to be massage therapists. Totally other career, right? We were massage therapists for several years. Technically, I still am one. And a few years into doing that, I really wanted to do something more social and fun and something with performing again. And that's when I got into weddings. So for about 5 years, my wife and I ran our massage practice, and I was doing weddings all at the same time. It got to be too much. So we gave up the massage practice, and now I just do weddings. But I also have a book on what I do in the wedding industry, which was very exciting for me. It's called Best Ceremony Ever. And you can really see that. It's kind of bright. Best Ceremony Ever.
Love it.
And to write the book and continue with my wedding practice, it was all I could do.
So where can that book be found? Because at the end of this, we're going to put this in. Okay, anywhere. Best Ceremony
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, indie books, pretty much everywhere.
Kudos to you. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
And so tell me a little bit, as you know, I have a course, How to Officiate Wedding Ceremonies, but tell me about the licensing process in New York for officiating.
Sure. It's neat. In New York, you go down to the city clerk's office right downtown, this massive bureaucratic building. There's this huge ledger you sign. Before you get to that point, you have to be ordained by a recognized institution. I happen to be ordained through the Universal Brotherhood movement.
Okay.
They're a little more involved than some of the online ordination companies where all you need is 5 minutes and a credit card. Universal Brotherhood movement, they interview you, you write essays, they really vet you before they say, okay, you're a good person, we will let you do weddings. So you do that, you prove to New York State that you have a congregation, that you're a minister of the congregation. So there's some hoops you have to jump through. But once you do that, you go down to City Hall and there's this huge, giant book, this giant ledger, and you sign your name by hand into this ledger, and bam, you can do weddings here for the rest of your life. It's
That's
pretty cool.
Wonderful. Now, when you say in New York, is that just in Manhattan or is it all 5 boroughs? Tell me what that encompasses.
That's for all of New York State.
Okay.
Yeah, not to get too granular with it, but if you get licensed in Manhattan, you're good for the whole state. If you get licensed outside of Manhattan, you can't do anything in Manhattan.
Interesting. So
that's a real general look at that.
Interesting, that little island, huh? That little peninsula, which is wonderful. As a matter of fact, I was in New York over just before Christmas, had a ball, loved it, and saw Music Man getting back to Broadway, right? And Hugh Jackman was incredible. Ate my way through, had a great time. So, which again, I'm the Bronx girl, so, and I didn't get to have really good pizza, but that's okay. I'm going back to the Bronx for that.
It's still here when you need it. Yeah,
I definitely. So tell me, how do you market yourself as far as with your, now your company's name is Illuminating Ceremonies?
Illuminating Ceremonies.
Okay. Go ahead. So share with us.
I advertise on The Knot. I used to advertise on both The Knot and Wedding Wire, which of course merged to form Wedding Pro.
Right.
So I'm still found through both of them, but mostly it's The Knot. So I actually looked this up the other day. In 2022, half of my weddings came from The Knot and half came from referrals from other wedding vendors, past couples I've married, stuff like that. So that made me really happy. Made me happy because the Knot membership's still worth it. And made me happy that I have a lot of people referring me to other people, which is just the best. And if there's ever a couple that saw me do a wedding and then I get to do their wedding, that's really fun. Because on those days, I try to get photos with me and both of the couples. And those are really,
that's
special.
neat. And you know, that is a way, definitely, let's face it, when you have referral business, that is wonderful. That's like a built-in repeat business. And it doesn't cost you that much in, marketing dollars as well. And yes, as an officiant now in Las Vegas, it's a little different. We're saturated. What I mean by saturated, we do over 80,000 weddings a year just in Las Vegas. So we have a lot of officiants. And that's one thing I really didn't get to talk about at Wedding MBAs. My talk flew by, like we were done. And I was like, oh my God, what do you mean I'm done?
It felt like 5 minutes, right?
I know, I felt like 5 minutes. But one thing I didn't get to touch on is actually the referral side of the industry. And share with us, do you do anything? Do you remunerate them back? I mean, first of all, they need share, you get them from wedding planners, photographers.
Well, I often get them from wedding planners I've worked with before, occasionally from photographers I've worked with, DJs. I love DJs. They seem to love me. So, and other officiants as well. What's nice in New York, we're not doing, 15 weddings a day here. We're doing maybe 1 or 2 or 3 a weekend. And once you're booked for a wedding that Saturday night, that's it. You can't do another wedding that Saturday night. So if someone reaches out to me, I'm already booked for a Saturday night. I say, I'm not available. Try my friend so-and-so. And they do the same for me. And some people will do something where they'll send a $20 Starbucks card or something. But it's really not necessary because we would end up sending the same $20 Starbucks card back and forth to each other. So what we do is we just refer people. We have little
Regifting.
groups of people, like geographically, I know that if there's a Long Island wedding, I'll send them to a certain person. If there's a New Jersey wedding, I'll send it to another person. If it's Manhattan. And so you kind of know like who would be best suited to this kind of wedding geographically, temperamentally, stuff like that.
Andrew, that's
Yeah.
funny. I call it cross-pollinating, and that's so important when you have vendors that become really your partners as well. And that's important. I always tell any new officiants, make friends with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes, and when you started in 2011, I started in 2010. I don't know about what you experienced there, but in Las Vegas, we had very staunch ministers, and they felt they were running the show, and everybody worked around them. And as you know, in this industry, it's not about us. It's about us delivering a great ceremony, but it's also it's the couple's day. I mean,
Yeah.
some of them. So one partner might have dreamt of this day for a long time. So you want to be able to provide them with something that's memorable and legendary. And that's what's important and elegant. So I think it's important, listening to your couple. That's the biggest thing. But I have found that even, the ministers, the ones that are a little older than me, well, I'm not going to give my age away, but they have a tendency to be a little bit more rigid in their style. And what style of ceremony would you say that you bring? What sets Chris apart from anybody else in NYC?
Well, I blow people's minds because I'm already talking the moment I set foot in the ceremony space, whether I'm saying hello to everybody, if I'm just kind of warming up the crowd, whatever it is, I set the tone from second number one that this is going to be a different ceremony than normal. I'm talking to people. I try to have a really uplifting energy out there. I try to be louder than most officiants they've heard, clearer than most officiants they've heard, more theatrical, and just getting everyone, get their attention going, get them excited, get them happy for what's about to happen, and hand off whatever's happening on a real up note. Now, people are surprised that a wedding ceremony can be funny. Some people don't even feel like they're allowed to laugh at first, and then when you win them over, they start laughing. And I think people are marvel at the fact that within the 20 minutes of a wedding ceremony, you can be laughing uproariously because I'm telling a true story about the couple, and then you can hear a pin drop because I'm saying some beautiful things about the couple, and everyone has a chance to cry and think it's wonderful and beautiful, and then you lift them up again and send them off to cocktail hour on a really good note. So the rhythms of a ceremony are something I try to be really closely in tune with, because you don't want it to be all funny, because it's not about that. And it's not about me, certainly. You don't want it to be all heavy and serious like 1,000 wedding ceremonies people have attended before. You want a nice balance of things so people can feel all the feelings, and feel like they've attended a real wedding. And I say that because a lot of times I'm in an event space or on a rooftop or at a baseball field or a museum. I'm not in a church. I'm not in a place where certain generations expect weddings can happen. And that's like the only place they can happen. So if someone walks into a lawn next to a mansion, you already have to kind of win them over to say, this is a real wedding, even though we're on a lawn next to a mansion in the middle of New Jersey or wherever it is. So people are shocked at how much they enjoy the wedding ceremony aspect of it. People always say, thank you so much for keeping it light. Thank you for not making me cry too much. Thank you for, saying all these things that were personal and true about the couple. Because I think a lot of guests are used to what I was used to in the old days, where I would go to a wedding and the ceremony would seem like something painful you had to sit through, like eating your vegetables before you're allowed to eat your steak or whatever. And I just never understood why it had to be that way. For me, I've been married for 20 years in a row to the same person. I think it's a really fun, wonderful thing in my life. And I think these people getting married have a lot to look forward to. So I try to have a positive view on that.
And I think that's so important. It's funny you talked about it shouldn't be painful. I think about church, I'm a Catholic girl on my knees all the time, and that's painful. But you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting because I was at Mass on Sunday and I had to speak about something. One of my friends had attended, and later on she said, you got up and you were funny and you were light. And she says, I did not expect that in church. And the same thing, vice versa, when you get out into a wedding ceremony, because you sound like your components are very similar to what I do. You've got enough to make them cry, enough to be serious, but you got to be lighthearted about it and incorporate the guest. But I could just imagine on a baseball field, Chris, I am jealous. I'm not even envious. I am jealous. I would love to. I'm putting it out there. I want to do a ceremony on a baseball field. How is that feeling? It must be incredible.
Well, it's okay. Let's clarify here. I've done 2 weddings at Citi Field, which is where the Mets play. Mm-hmm. The first one was in the outfield. There's a bridge out there that goes from one part of the bleachers to the other. And the second wedding I did was right on top of the visiting team's dugout. That was really cool. It was the middle of winter, so it was kind of unusual to see snow in the field. But it was still, you're in Citi Field, you're on top of the dugout. Now it felt really, really cool. On the first wedding I did there, I got to use, the microphone I used was the microphone for the entire stadium. So the microphone that they use during games to announce the next batter or whatever, that was the one I used for the ceremony. So that was really cool.
I
recommend it highly.
I'm jealous. But this is why I love what we do. I mean, it's different. And you have to have a passion for what you're doing. It sounds like you both have a passion, you and your wife. And that this is you have to have it in you. People, when we start out, and what advice would you give yourself 12 years ago when you started out as how you are today? What would you tell? What would you tell your young
that's
self?
A great question. I would probably tell myself to slow down, to listen even closer than you think you have to what your couples want. Not that I wasn't listening back then, but knowing what I know now, I can learn so much about a couple in the first few minutes I'm talking to them. And I know I'll probably have a good feeling of what their families are like. I have a good feeling of what the vibe is going to be like on their wedding day, just in a few minutes of talking to them. So I would do a lot of listening. Like you say, it is about them, right? And when we interview, for example, we are selling ourselves, but it would really help you just to listen to everything they can possibly tell you about what they think their ceremony will be like, what they think their wedding will be like. Get them talking as much as possible before you start going into your spiel about yourself. That's one thing I would say.
No,
I would also tell myself, you have so much to look forward to. Oh man, I had no idea, Maria. I thought it was going to be something I did part-time here and there, occasionally throughout the year. I had no idea that I would be doing 3 and 4 weddings a weekend at these incredible venues with these amazing people. It's turned out to be 500% more exciting and rewarding than I ever dreamed it would be. So I tell myself to get ready to have a great time.
And you're right. And most people do start out and it's part-time for me in Las Vegas, but I've done over 1,000 weddings last year. But you have to remember a completely different price point. And I only work with 4 vendors because I want to deliver a great ceremony. I'm not one of these 5-minute ceremonies. I have to ask you a question, if you can just give me a range, because again, I'm always looking to share because I have people that train all over the United States. What would you say the price range is for a ceremony in New York? Just the price range, high to low, basically.
I put on my website a range of $700 to $1,700. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I think my high range is just to not scare people too much. I've gotten over 2,000 for a wedding here. It's not very common. As I don't know if it's the same in Vegas, but the wedding officiant tends to be the smallest part of their budget, and they tend to be shocked when it's anything over $800.
Oh,
a lot of people are.
That's incredible, because Vegas is not that way. Way minimal compared to what you're saying.
Yeah, and that money I try to explain depends a lot on the geography. and how much I'm going to have to travel to get to the wedding venue. So if someone tells me they're getting married around the corner from my apartment here, that's one thing. Right. If they tell me they're getting married out in Montauk at the end of Long Island, that's a very different thing. So that's really where the range comes in. And officiants here, just like officiants everywhere, I think are always struggling even to be considered a wedding vendor. There are a lot of places that they don't even think of the officiant as a vendor because it's so ingrained that that's the religious part, or that's like separate from the party, you know. I'm doing a whole talk at the special event in Orlando at the end of March about how the ceremony can launch the whole party, and how if you have a spectacular ceremony, it just gives this emotional boost to the entire evening and makes every other wedding vendor look good. But I have a feeling after being in this industry this long, not that I've been in it that long, but long enough to know that it's never going to change. And the reason it's never going to change, I think, is because of who our clients are. Our clients are people who have never had to deal with wedding vendors before. They've never planned a wedding before. It's the first time and hopefully the only time they're ever getting married. And so they don't know anything, you know, so we're doing a lot of educating. And I think clients operate on a lot of hearsay, and they're really concerned about the party and the reception and the DJ and stuff like that. And they tend to think about the ceremonial last, which makes me sad.
But it's the most important. You're right, Chris.
But it's the most important part.
Yeah, it's the trajectory of the kickoff of their celebration. And you're right. And when you leave that as an officiant, you want to leave everybody feeling wonderful. And that's important. And that's why you have to bring your A game. So what advice would you give an officiant if they really weren't feeling up to par? That happens. Life gets in the way.
Like physically or
both, mentally or physically.
If they're not feeling up to it,
yeah.
This is the old showbiz thing where the show must go on, especially in this case, because the show is only one time. You know, you don't have an understudy.
That's
true.
You
may have colleagues you can refer people to, but if you're not feeling well that day, this is where things like meditation can be really useful. Anything you can do to calm your breath and calm your heart rate down, and get your mind off of yourself and start thinking about your couple and think how happy you are for the couple and what they're going through that day. I love it when wedding planners give me the what do they call it? The day of run sheet or whatever it is.
Yes.
They break down everything.
One of the show sheet. Yeah.
Well, everything from the moment they wake up at the hotel and makeup arrives and they're doing hair. And I like to look at that and say, like, look at my watch and go, okay, what are they doing right now? Oh, wow, they're doing this right now. Okay, that's kind of fun. And of course, I'm just, at home drinking coffee, but these people are already doing hair and makeup at 7 a.m.
Oh, sure.
So I would say just think about your couple and don't think so much about yourself. And maybe you can think of all the people in all the world. They chose you to be up there with them at their wedding. I mean, that thought alone should make anyone feel really, really good.
That's a wonderful way to end this, is they've chosen you. And I love that. And you're right. And that's special because now you're part of the family. Now you're part of the family.
Yeah.
You are. And you know what I even tell people as well, and what you say, affects and stays with that couple for the rest of their lives. They might pull from that ceremony when they're going through some difficulties or when they're feeling elated. But also, and I always say this, is that when you look out, and you've probably experienced this, Chris, where you look out and you see the audience and all of a sudden you say something and they go, or maybe a light bulb moment went on. And that could have maybe increased intimacy, or maybe maybe they were a little annoyed at their partner and now they're no longer annoyed. Is it true?
It's true. It's really affirming, I think, for a couple who may never have this kind of chance again to be publicly applauded. Like things about them are appreciated in a very obvious way. In the situation of a ceremony where people are saying, "Oh," they're laughing, or they're they're maybe repeating it or looking at each other and acknowledging that it's true, that may be the first time the couple realizes that those people feel that way as well. And so it's a wonderful live event. And I'm so happy that live weddings are back in abundance.
Oh gosh.
I never enjoyed the Zoom weddings. There was just something missing,
We never did them on Zoom in Las Vegas, but yeah, something about Zoom. And how did you manage to know? Tell me on the paperwork side, how did you know it was the couple? And the paperwork is so, here we have to have them here in front of us, but that's our state laws.
It was so awkward. And honestly, I didn't do that many. I probably did only fewer than 10.
Okay.
I have friends who did hundreds of them. And I just kind of put out to the universe that I didn't like them and ended up not doing much. But it was ridiculous because they'd have to, while you're talking to them, to do the signing of the license part, you'd have to have them send you a PDF, and then you have to go online and do the PDF signing and then email it back to them and ask if they got it. It was very awkward.
I bet it was.
And supposedly you had to have them show their driver's license to prove they were who they were. And you'd go through it, you'd make them do that. But really, who they are. Who else is going to be getting married at this time with this name? But it was so ridiculous. And I did a lot of live weddings, though, still during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Socially distanced, people stood further apart, but there were a lot of people who did live weddings. They were different, but they were still there.
We did in Vegas, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I want to first thank you so much. I mean, you have just enlightened my world. I'm so glad that we finally got to connect. We had met in November, and I had sent an email to you, but maybe I just had the wrong email address. And I'm so glad you reached out to me on Instagram. Chris, would you share with us a little bit about how they can get in touch with you? And I'm going to put this in the show notes along with your book information. But please tell everybody a little bit where they can reach you.
Sure. Well, the website is illuminatingceremonies.com. And the best email is very simple. It's chris@illuminatingceremonies.com.
You make it so simple.
Yeah.
So everybody,
and my phone number is there too. It's very easy, and people can text me and stuff like that. I'm easy to find.
well, I'm glad to hear that. And I'm so glad you took the time to be on today's program, because I know that our time is valuable. We know that we'll never get this back. So I'm so thrilled you came on to share this with other people. So in the meantime, everybody, continue to stay healthy, happy, and safe. As I always say, spread love. Have a great day.